Hello and welcome. My name is Ted Hulsy. I'm Vice President of Marketing at eFolder and your host for today's event. Welcome to our eFolder Partner Chat series. This webinar series brings together leading experts for business-oriented discussions. Today's topic is a partner panel, and our title is Boosting Your Bottom Line. 3 successful partners share how to increase MRR by selling and deploying Anchor. Today we are joined by 3 successful eFolder partners that are deploying Anchor. Before I go through the agenda, what I want to do is just cover a few housekeeping items. Today's session is being recorded. The recorded version of the webinar will be made available on eFolder's YouTube channel. We will also make copies of the slides and a copy of the recording in WMV format available to those who registered for the event. We've put all participants in listen-only mode. You can enjoy the audio portion of today's event either by streaming it on your computer or by dialing in over the phone. Questions are strongly encouraged throughout today's discussion. I have a couple key questions to kind of lead us off with our panelists, but we have planned a special Q&A section at the end of today's discussion. But you can submit questions as we go along, and I strongly encourage you to do that. So what I want to do now is introduce our panelists. Michael Faree is Manager of Technology Support at Dayhill Office Technology. Michael, welcome to today's discussion.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, and then next is Antonio Stroman, who's the President of the Brass Effect. Antonio, welcome to today's panel. Antonio, do I have you?
Yes, thank you for having me.
Okay, and then Brad Walser is President of Walser Technology Group. Brad, welcome to the call.
Thank you, Ted.
Okay, so what we want to do before we get kind of into the panel format is ask each of our guests to tell you a little bit about their company. So, Michael, why don't you lead us off?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. So as you guys can tell, Dayhill's part of Xerox. We've been doing IT from a copier perspective for a very long time. It was a natural progression to go down the managed IT realm. We've looked at other products, and eFolder really stood out from the perspective of how they can really bring that need that the clients have back to us and still make sure we can service it and build with our client base. So we've utilized the product pretty heavily from that perspective. And we do, as you can tell, managed services, managed print, and it's been very, very successful for us.
Okay, great, Michael. Great introduction. Antonio, tell us a little bit about the Brass Effect.
Yes, we've been in business since 2009. We are a managed service company here in the Dallas-Frisco area. What we've been using the Anchor product for mainly is in the vertical as far as medical is concerned. We found a nice little niche there where basically being able to go into environments, evaluate what they currently have, and put in place a solution and a direct competition to items that they might actually pick up that they consider free. And we kind of show them where the pitfalls lie in that, and the Anchor solution has been a great component of what we use so far.
Okay, fantastic. And Brad, tell us about Walser Technology Group.
All right, thank you, Ted. Walser Technology Group was founded in 2003. We currently have 12 employees, and we focus in and around Rowan County, which is Salisbury, North Carolina. We're in between some major markets, so we found a nice niche that we like to work in. We go in about a 1-hour range from our office. But we've currently got over 150 managed services clients. And one of our competing advantages or competitive advantages are we do have an on-site data center. So we own all the services as it relates to our, we own all the infrastructure as it relates to our services for our customers. We like keeping full control of our customer data. We like making sure that our secondary facility, we do all of our own backups. And the Anchor products work nicely into our portfolio of managed services. So we're happy to be reselling the product.
Okay, great. And you guys actually leverage the private cloud version of Anchor, and you run it on your own infrastructure, correct?
That's correct. We do run an on-premise version of eFolder.
Okay, great. So I think before we hop into kind of the panel discussion, I just want to do a couple things. Remind our audience to ask questions as we go along. If you happen to be joining today's discussion and you don't know much about what Anchor does, so Anchor is one of eFolder's products. Well, we are a company that does business with nearly 3,000 managed service providers worldwide, and we really specialize in software and cloud services built for MSPs. The Anchor product is really a platform that's designed for file syncing and collaboration for your clients. So the big challenge today with of clients of all sizes is how to deal with bring your own device trend, the proliferation of devices, the desire of workers to really compute wherever they go, to have their data at their fingertips, to be able to compute across different laptops and workstations in different locations. Organizations more and more are highly distributed. As Antonio mentioned, the compliance requirements in many, many different industry segments are going up all the time. And data privacy in this highly complex distributed IT world is very complicated, and there's many, many small businesses that are doing it the wrong way. They've got huge data leakage and data privacy issues if they bring consumer-grade technology into the workplace. And so what Anchor allows MSPs to do is to go out there and give the clients and the users at these organizations a business-grade file sync experience so that they can sync data between all of their devices, between their corporate-issued laptop and their mobile devices. They're able to be effective on the go. They're able to have access. There's audit trails for all of the content and files. There's fine-grained security controls that you as the MSP can put in place to govern that data. And then very basic things that make the client's life and their users easier. They can share large files. They can share files and content with third parties via the guest sharing capability. They can do that securely. And MSPs have the option of either buying what we call the SaaS version of Anchor from eFolder, where we run the cloud infrastructure, the whole solution behind the scenes for the partner, and then you administer it. Or alternatively, like in the case of Hulsy Technology Group, you can license just the software and run Anchor in your own cloud environment, in your own colo, on your own private cloud infrastructure. And the product is unique, and the platform is unique because it's really built for managed service providers from the ground up. There's a complete multi-tenant infrastructure and framework for the product, which allows you to grow your client base, grow your deployment across literally scores or hundreds of different organizations, and to do that in a labor-efficient manner where you can keep a global view of your entire Anchor installed base. There's some additional things we do to make this really ideal for managed services deployment. We have integrations with ConnectWise and Autotask. The product integrates for authentication with Active Directory. It's HIPAA compliant. There's various different deployment scenarios like I mentioned previously. The product can be branded with your own identity and can be priced, packaged, and resold in scores of different ways. No matter what your MSP business model is, Anchor can fit into your model because we sell it in a white label fashion on a wholesale basis only through MSPs and channel partners, and you can turn around and bundle and package and resell it and deploy it however you see fit. So that's kind of the overall context. What I want to do now is just continue to remind our audience to ask questions, and then but let's just start out and ask each of our guests to just talk a little bit about what big problems are you solving for clients with your deployment of Anchor today? So don't be shy, guys. Just jump in.
All right. This is Brad. I can tell you we use the Anchor product in a variety of methods, from a file server replacement to also being individual machine backups, especially for those that have a remote work staff. All they need is internet connection, as well as doing individual server backups if we're doing flat file backups. It's what we consider our basic backup service. So we do individual machines, server backups, and then even file server replacements with the product.
So let's dig in there a little bit more, Brad. So just talk about what's happening in terms of small business requirements around a file server. Do you need one? Do you take it out? Do you decommission it? Do you move it to the cloud? And how Anchor fits into that.
Gotcha. So when we're going in and consulting with businesses that have, let's call it 20 or fewer employees, the trend of these days is really not to own infrastructure. Most small businesses don't have physical space for it. They don't have technical expertise on staff. They really look for these software as a service type options. And if you can bundle a small business in with hosted Exchange to do all their email and their backups on it, as well as you can get them on a hosted file server, there's not a whole lot of need unless they have a very specific line of business application, which then again you can also cloud enable through doing application hosting. So we like the value proposition with customers to say, hey, we ultimately can just replace your infrastructure. Instead of paying $5,000 for a file server, then having to pay a few $100s a month to back it up, we can simply just replace the whole solution with a cloud-based file server, and your backups are just included to our off-site co-location facility. So we like to use it as a replacement, and when you work out the numbers, it becomes a very good return on investment for the customer to just keep their capital and increase their monthly operating expenses a little bit.
Very well put. Talk to us a little bit about how you position back the anchors. When I was doing my brief overview, I didn't talk much about the file level backup capabilities of Anchor, but maybe talk about how that works and then how it fits into your portfolio.
Gotcha. So doing that, we have 3 different backup solutions at Walser Technology Group. We have kind of a basic file level backup solution, which anchors the product of choice that we recommend. We have more of a business grade backup solution that's application aware and database aware, and that's another eFolder product that we use. And then we have what we call more of our enterprise backup solution, which is Aperture, doing those image level backups and multiple snapshots throughout the day. So we try to fit our customers into those 3 different buckets. If they choose a file level backup, it's a pretty easy transition in that we can do file server enablement, where if they have an existing file server, we sync it all out to the cloud, and then we can really get everyone installed with the agents, looking at the cloud version, and then the back-end server can just disappear. It's one of those things that makes the transition very easy to get people over to this file level backup service.
Excellent. So let's bring on our other panelists here. Michael or Antonio, tell us a little bit about how you're solving client challenges with Anchor.
Yes, sir. Hey, this is Michael Furry with Dayhill. Kind of to expand on what was already stated, we have one client specifically that has 29 locations, to give you an example. They're all distributed. They're not interconnected. They will be at some point, but the biggest problem was they needed accounting groups at the central place to get access to all these other sites. They were VPNing. We all know the wonderful world of VPN, connecting in, remoting in, copying files. With the Anchor product, we were able to say, leave the servers till they die. But now we use the file server enablement for that client to sync everything up, and then they use iPads, iPhones, Androids, whatever device they want, computers, Macs, to get to whatever data they need, access what they need. And even beyond that, the system was built, I would say I like the way eFolder thinks way in advance, because they engineered it to a point where us as the MSPs don't have to really kill ourselves. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody else, but on the partner panel side, but really you kind of set it and forget it, tweak it as the client makes adjustments to their business processes. But even we all know the wonderful crypto wall, cryptoware, encryption stuff. We've had to roll back some clients' data, but it's real easy with a couple of clicks. They get all their data back. We had one client with about 70,000 documents that all got encrypted with the good old Locky file, and I was running to dinner and called support. They rolled it back with some scripts, and all was good for that night. So it's a pretty powerful product that's kind of built from the ground up, not the other bolt-on products that were consumer grade, or yeah, more residential consumer grade, and now they're trying to morph into business grade.
Right, so let's dig in a little bit more on a couple of those topics. So, I mean, I think it's worthwhile to kind of explain file server enablement, because it's one of the killer apps, really, we think, of Anchor. That you know, I think Brad talked about how there's this really pretty massive trend in the small business market of moving file servers to the cloud, because you can today with technologies like Anchor. But you do have a very large installed base of file servers, and all those file servers, there's huge challenges, right? There's highly distributed organizations. There's people who need to contribute and collaborate on that content, who may or may not be using their VPNs correctly, may or may not be checking in content to the canonical file server. So you have all these challenges. And what you can do, and it's not easy to solve these remote access challenges. VPN technology has been around for a long time, but it's very clunky. It's hard for users to get straight. It's hard to support. Costs a lot of money to support it. With file server enablement, you can basically map the file server to team shares in the cloud, and then everybody who's on the Anchor system who's authorized to access those various team shares can very seamlessly contribute with content. So that's how file server enablement works. And so Michael, tell us a little bit more about the client with 29 locations. I mean, what were they experiencing before, and now what are they experiencing after?
Yeah, so we took over from another group, and they were building it all where they had to sync to an FTP, very unsecure, as we know how protocols work. So we kind of had to stop the other vendor from getting this accounting data, morph it into their controlled system environment under our review. So we were able to install the Anchor product on all of their computer systems. They, out of the gate, said I want it on every single system. So we were able to deploy it to all the workstations, laptops, and create accounts so they can get to it from whatever device they chose. And now they can access whatever files or information from within the system. And now they know they have a long-term ability to capture it themselves without having to depend on one person's site. It's in the cloud, so it's very resilient. It's not going to go down if we have a power outage in San Antonio or wherever we may future store it. We did choose to use the Anchor cloud just so it's less CapEx, more OpEx for us, and that seems to be working out really, really well so far.
Okay, well, great. I want to pull Antonio into the conversation as well. So Antonio, tell us a little bit about what you're doing and the medical vertical.
Yeah, so what we've done is that we've been with Anchor for about 3 years now. And the way we actually found the solution was we were looking for something that was going to be HIPAA compliant and actually be not just the consumer grade product, but something that we felt as though would comply with all the stringent laws of HIPAA. And so what we've done over the years is that, you know, we've also been involved with making suggestions, and some of our clients are directly related as far as we have some billing clients, and we have other clients that transfer information back and forth a lot. So, and what we started noticing was more and more of those guys were actually using Dropbox, and not the business version either. And so when we started to explain to them how these guys were being open to breach laws by, you know, we'll paint the scenario and say, hey, you know, do you realize that if you share something with, whether it be an employee or someone else, and they have a free Dropbox account, I said what happens in that particular situation if that employee or that customer is no longer there, the patient information that was shared, you know, now it doesn't belong to that company per se, but it actually belongs to that particular employee. And with that, if they're no longer a part of the organization, now that company has just opened themselves up to breaches. And so we go out and we kind of explain it, and then we explain, you know, how the dashboard works, how the individuals have more control, the remote wipe capabilities, and we've seen a number of times where an employee has actually left, and then we were able to basically just go through one click of a button for the most part, and then we removed all the data. It makes it a pretty easy sell. And so, and over the years, as we said, the product has improved. I like the fact that there's input to say, hey, these are the things we're seeing out there in the field. Let's see what we can do. And I don't think we would have that type of flexibility with some of the other products out there, and that's one of the reasons why we're still here.
Okay, well, great. And let's kind of talk a little bit about just open it up to kind of the panel. I mean, what do you guys, what, I think Antonio shared his experience about, finding medical clients who might be using consumer grade Dropbox. What are Michael and Brad, what do you guys find commonly out there in the wild, if you will, amongst your clients? And how do you, are there other measures you take in addition to deploying Anchor? Are there other measures you take to try to educate the client around, their security posture, or do you even take it a step further?
Ted, y'all have a white labeled video that you put out, or a white labeled PowerPoint that we've taken a lot of content from about data leakage and issues with consumer grade file sync services. So we have one that we've kind of put into our slide deck template at Walser Technology Group, and we do use that as part of, I guess you could call it user education when we're talking to customers, because that question comes up a lot, and having the data tied to an individual account is a very strong sales point. You don't want corporation data tied to an individual account, as well as what happens when devices are stolen or lost. You can't do that wiping of the data. You also don't have full controls over where that data was shared. I think Michael mentioned that the dashboard was built for a multi-tenanted MSP type environment, and it's a very user-friendly dashboard. There's a lot of good data right there on the dashboard panel, and it's a pretty easy to navigate solution. So I'll just say we do come up against the free versions of Dropbox and consumer grade items, and we've put a small slide deck together that started with some of your white labeled content. And it makes a very easy conversation. Most business owners are receptive to risk when you can show them how it's introduced. So that usually makes a pretty easy sell on our side.
Great. Michael, you got any observations on that topic?
I mean, we continue to run into clients trying to make their own decisions. So at the end of the day, we're their virtual CIO, their help desk. We could be a tier 2, tier 3 escalation piece. We could be, we have one client that actually left us for manage IT because they wanted to go to a one-man shop, but we still have them for file sync and charge the same amount that we used to charge when we did all of it. So I mean, it's a very profitable component for us. We still see the clients attempt to do their own thing, but as we continue to explain security posture and recoverability of files and rolling back and just the power that the solution has, it even does a locking of documents, Excel files, so that they can kind of check in and out as they need to. And you also have revision control, so it's, like I said, it's really, really powerful from that perspective. But we continue to leverage those components with the clients. For those that keep Dropbox, usually it takes an event. We had that large organization, 28 sites. One of their key financial persons was terminated, and upon review of their system, even though we told them to delete it, they were using a personal version of Dropbox, had to work with them directly, migrate the data. It was migrated within minutes, but it kind of goes back to that whole who's controlling the data, the individual's personal account or your organization account. So this helps get you out of any kind of legal chaos from that perspective.
Yeah, and I think, just for everybody on the line, I mean, I think, when I talk with partners, I kind of find that if, we've got a huge number of partners that have just standardized on Anchor and they're using it in these ways, kind of like we've talked about already, where they're either replacing file servers or they're using file server enablement to improve collaboration across an organization. But sometimes you're in a position where you kind of need to sell, if you will, and get the business owner or the client to make a conscious decision to opt into additional functionality and hence cost. And we really always talk about it as kind of a 1-2 punch. That it really starts with security and data privacy as the first punch, which is your employees, they are going to, shadow IT happens when you don't consciously address employee demand with a secure solution. So if, employees want to be agile, they want to be productive, they want to have their data with them wherever they go, and if you don't give them a good secure alternative, they will end run the MSP or the IT department and find their own solution, often in a highly insecure fashion. And so really, I think a lot of business owners, as you guys mentioned, are receptive to that conversation, and that's really talking about the risks of consumer-grade file sync technologies, kind of infecting the workplace, if you will, is a really big reality. You can use your RMM tool to audit and control that and find out, who are your clients that have the most Dropbox deployed, consumer-grade Dropbox deployed and in use. You can use your firewalls and things like OpenDNS to understand what applications are flowing through the networks and block them. But you have to follow up with that second punch, which is providing a secure business-grade alternative, and that's where Anchor comes in. And as Brad mentioned, we've put together a lot of marketing materials, what we call partner playbooks, that give you a lot of canned content to go out and tell that story. So would encourage you, if you don't have access to those, talk to your eFolder account manager to get your hands on those or go into the partner portal to get them. Want to just kind of tackle a couple questions. So Fred asks, does Anchor allow for file locking when two users need to access the same file? And the answer, and I think maybe Michael just mentioned file locking as a capability. Yes, we have file locking, and its main utility comes in team shares where you've got multiple users that have access to content, and so you can either at the admin level or the user level lock files so that you don't run into version control problems. I guess just Fred asked a different question. Let me just throw this out to the audience. We've talked a lot about consumer-grade file sync solutions. Have anyone on the panel looked at Dropbox for Business, and do you have any points of view on good, bad, or indifferent about Anchor versus Dropbox for Business?
This is Antonio Stroman. Yeah, we looked at Dropbox for Business. As a matter of fact, we recently did we went out to a partner event where we actually displayed the product, and we basically used the Anchor information as far as competitives, and we basically kind of just laid it out, and we went point by point for anyone who may have used the product, and we were saying, hey, this is why our solution is better. And at the end of the day, what we find out is a lot of people, they know what they know, and you'll find those that are actually willing to try something different. And when they try something different, it actually works, and then we compete directly with the cost. We don't necessarily reduce the price because we think, hey, let's get in at a lower price point. We feel that the product is as good, if not better, than anything that's out there, and we kind of present it that way.
Right. So Dropbox, it's undeniable. They do have good brand name recognition. I think what our partners, most of eFolder partners, are passionate believers in trying to build your own brand, your own identity, and to partner with vendors that allow you to put your own brand and identity first, because that's going to be the most profitable alternative. But I think, as Antonio mentioned, there are a ton of features where you just go line by line in terms of capabilities, either that the user would want or that the MSP would want from a security and control perspective that Anchor has that Dropbox does not have. And then I will comment just on terms of margins. I think what you see with Dropbox is fairly consistent with what you see in other big vendors, and that they don't really empower their channel partners to do any better than, say, 20 to 30 points of margin on the product. And with Anchor, it's completely different. We have partners that are driving 50, 60, 70% recurring gross margins because of the way we price and package the product, and then what you can do in terms of turning around and offering it to the end user market. So in terms of, Fred had a follow-up. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Hey, Ted. Yeah, sorry, this is Michael Free. Hey, so I wanted to touch on one piece. I know that we're all used to these devices getting smaller hard drives, SSDs. So I know one piece hasn't been touched on, and it's kind of in the technical weeds, but WebDAV isn't really there for Dropbox and some other solutions without all sorts of other third-party wrap stuff, and then you got other potential failure components. But we actually use it internally within Dayhill, and they're a heavy use of our components as well for the sales staff. That way, if the device gets lost or stolen, we can purge it. But going back to the WebDAV piece, if it's a Surface or a laptop with only 128 gigs of space, but you need the 2 terabyte team share, you can still use WebDAV to get to the files you need, download what you need, and then upload what you were working on. So because of those key pieces, as you start to dig into the details, there's really, like I was saying earlier, eFolder really thinks above and beyond what are the trends. They're keeping in touch with the future, and I know even Dropbox says, oh, we're sorry, we we don't have that functionality, kind of politely.
Well, the selective sync piece too, even if you're using a full Windows OS with a smaller hard drive than 2 terabytes, I know that was introduced a few releases ago, but the selective sync has been a very well accepted upgrade as well. It's not there with a lot of products.
That's right. So let's kind of dig in that. So WebDAV, allows you to do a map drive where you have access to kind of the full file system in a set of folders or team shares without any of it being synced locally to the machine. And then I think, as Brad mentioned, selective sync is a capability that we implemented first on team shares. So a common phenomenon in team shares is you have a large repository, large set of folders that have a ton of content, maybe a lot of old content that's maybe almost at this point almost like archival, but it's still there and accessible. Or you might have lots of folders and files that are maybe like media-rich content, like video content or other flavors of large files. And you just don't want to sync those locally. You may occasionally need a video, you may occasionally need a photo, but you don't want to sync all that stuff locally with smaller, smaller SSD drives and that sort of thing. So selective sync, first application was kind of in a team share setting, but now even in your own personal sync folder, you can very selectively go in there and decide which folders stay in the cloud exclusively and which will get synced down to machines. And then you can actually, like I compute, my personal experience is I have got an iPhone, an iPad, a Windows laptop, and a Windows desktop, and I compute across all 4 devices, right? And so I will have different, like on my laptop, certain team shares, I don't sync those down onto my laptop because I don't want to consume, the limited storage on my laptop. But on my, home office desktop, whole kit and caboodle, everything's synced down, right? So that's kind of how selective sync works. I just want to encourage everyone to ask questions for our panelists. Fred, just to go back to the Dropbox conversation, yes, we do have competitive kill sheets that go through line by line comparing Anchor with Dropbox, Dropbox for Business, Google Drive, OneDrive, etc. So that is available. Mark asked a rather long question, and I'm going to try to abstract it. But I guess, so Mark wants to know just a little bit more about, so whichever panelist is using file server enablement, could you talk a little bit more about how you're using it? And then I'm going to chime in a bit about collaborative web editing. And the difference between kind of file server enablement as such and then collaborative web editing. So so whoever's using file server enablement, talk a little bit more about how you're using it.
Hey, this is Michael Furry with Dayhill. From the file server enablement, we actually enable it for every client that has a file server. What it does, the quick explanation of it is it connects to a server folder or file structure from that perspective, and takes it and handles the replication of that to the cloud and syncing it back and forth. So you can still edit and access the documents locally. The way we tell the client is you can do all your work at the office like you already did. When you're ready to go home, by the time you get home, it's already synced to the cloud, and when you get to your home system, whether you're doing WebDAV or the client, then you'll get to those same files. So the enablement allows you to, like it's saying, enable those files and folders to be replicated to team shares as you choose.
Right, and so just to clarify, so Mark's question, so we can clarify things for Mark a bit, and in most cases, for knowledge workers who want kind of the full either Windows or Mac experience of editing documents, you're taking file server content and syncing it down to their Windows hosts or their Macs so that they can have, full authoring capabilities on those documents, right? And what you're eliminating is you're eliminating the need for a VPN. You're eliminating the need of a remote worker to have to VPN back to headquarters or the data center where the file server resides to sync up with the file server. What the experience I've often had is companies, you get like data sprawl. You often have like a headquarters staff. Everybody's using the file server. All the files are canonical and organized at the headquarters location, but everybody out in the field is pulling their hair out. They either don't have what they need, or they're producing valuable work content that's not synced back to the file server. So then the headquarters folks are out of sync. So file server are able to kind of give you the best of both worlds. In office, where the file server already resides, where you're on a fast LAN, you don't need to change anything. But then for everybody who's remote, or for those headquarters staff, just like was just shared, when they go home and they're on remote machines, they have access to all that content. Now, what's I think important to clarify is that's not saying necessarily that Anchor supports kind of logging in and editing an Excel spreadsheet in the cloud, like with web editing. That's not what we mean by file server, in the cloud. I mean, I guess the evolution is what you can do, and we've talked about this example today, is that at some point, once you've synced all the content from the file server to the cloud, you can like decommission that file server. Then everything's in the cloud. And Windows hosts, Mac hosts, mobile devices can all access that content and then just lives in the cloud. So that's what we mean by a file server living in the cloud. But that is not to say necessarily that you're editing those documents in via a web browser. That's what we call collaborative web editing, and that is a roadmap feature of Anchor that's coming within just a couple months. So that's kind of taking things to the next level in terms of collaboration, where you can use a thing like a browser to actually edit Word documents or Excel spreadsheets right in the cloud, or right on a web browser when the documents are residing in the cloud. So just wanted to kind of clarify a couple of those concepts that were bleeding together. Let's see. Let me dive into my Q&A log here. Okay, so I'm gonna take James's question here. Let's see here. We've been looking at hosting our own Anchor installation, but the initial license count commit of 100 has been a small speed bump. I wanted to add that we are currently reselling Sooner for $10 a seat. Okay, so James just wants to know. I mean, I don't know what the question is actually, but yeah, I mean, I guess. So James' question is there a license count commitment for private cloud, and what about it? I think in general what I'll just take that one. But in general, private cloud, most of our partners who are doing private cloud are usually deploying, supporting hundreds of users, and so we have a 100 user minimum. What I would just encourage James to do is talk to your account manager, your salesperson, and just try to revisit the topic, and maybe copy me in on the communication and see if we can't do something for you there. Let's see here. So maybe Rick just has a question about kind of the user experience when you do file server enable. Wouldn't it be slow to access a file server in the cloud on Anchor? I mean, Michael or Brad, you guys are doing lots of file server enable. Any comments on kind of performance and how the experience goes?
We don't seem to have any performance lags. I will tell you, obviously, if you're doing that WebDAV or selective sync, you're only going to be as fast as your internet connections. But for most normal installations, you have a local versions of the files already on the machine you're working on them. So it's as easy as opening them out of your file explorer. They're just there. We haven't experienced any lags, and it's really because most of the time we do a full sync down to the client level. And then we also have a gig internet speed going into our data center that we have a fiber carrier here in our local community that allows pretty high bandwidth solutions that we haven't seen any file lags or issues.
Okay, yeah, great.
And I would say the same. This is Michael. I would say the same. There's really no delay. We sync it locally. If it's WebDAV, again, it goes back to the speed of the internet connection. But since they're synced locally per the client's needs or space allowed, for marketing components, it may be hard to sync all of it because usually they have terabytes of data on an NAS. So we've yet to see that issue.
Okay, and just a couple comments. I mean, there was a follow-up question about kind of user minimums and ramps. We always, we do offer lots of options to, ramp up your deployment. So again, another topic to touch base with your eFolder salesperson. Just a quick technical question. Eric wants to know, is Anchor FINRA compliant? And the answer is no. The federal market is not something we're very focused on. We're almost exclusively focused on the SMB market through MSPs, so we don't support FINRA today. So just a more high-level question Steve wants to know, and I think this could be for everybody, but how are you typically selling Anchor, as a part of a broader managed service or as an a la carte service offering?
This is Brad with Hulsy Technology Group. We offer all of our services from a managed service perspective, a la carte. It just allows us to have a lot more flexibility on the contracts. So everything we offer is an a la carte solution. Obviously, we do sell other services that like hosted exchange and other items, but it's up to the customer on their needs and to what we feel is a good fit for them from a solution. So we're completely a la carte.
But what that, but Brad,
just Antonio Stroman.
Antonio, we'll do that in 1 sec, but let me just dig in with Brad just real quick on this one. So Brad, but what comes out the other end is you'll have in the managed service engagement, and the client you may be deploying, 10 or 12 different a la carte services in a comprehensive bundle to that client. Do I have that correctly?
That's correct. A lot of times they turn on multiple services, such as we have an RMM tool that we use. So we may turn on network monitoring, we may turn on hosted exchange accounts, we may turn on Anchor backup solution for them, or a file server solution. So again, all of our offerings that are cloud-based are a la carte, but yes, they're usually bundled in with other items like managed antivirus, a lot of these other things that we sell and service.
Okay, Antonio, talk a little bit about how you're pricing and packaging things.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, for the most part, what we do is that we've kind of branded the solution, and the way we put it out there to the market is via our own solution that, we basically get a lot of website hits on it, and we tend to sell the product that way. We've kind of broken it up into 3 tiers of pricing, and that's for people who kind of far away from us, if you would. But for those customers who we have locally, who are our managed service customers, we'll still introduce the product that way, and then what we do is kind of make it an add-on. But we make it an add-on based off of what we've already priced and kind of the solution that we have out there in the market.
Right, Antonio, and you were telling Taylor, my colleague Taylor, a little bit about some of the clever marketing stuff you're doing. Can you talk a little bit about how you kind of drive new demand and awareness on your offering?
Yeah, well, one of the things that we do is that we do a lot with Facebook marketing. We've gone through and we kind of looked at what's out there with a specific target of saying, hey, we're trying to target those guys who might be HIPAA conscious, and they're actually looking for a solution. And when we do it that way, we know we're going to direct competition with something like a Dropbox, and we actually mentioned that in our advertising. And so the people who go out there and might check us out and might do the free trial, usually probably I would say 50 to 60% of the people who do our trial actually sign up for one of our solutions.
Okay, great. Michael, any comments on kind of pricing and packaging?
Yeah, so the pricing and packaging we've always included as part of the overall solution to the client, because they're going to ask for certain key parts, and now that everything's cloud-centric, we all know you can kind of try to design your own, but there's no reason, since eFolder's already done it and they really have a drive. Even the support group is really forward-thinking, and they actually listen to us as consumers of the product, and a lot of the times if we ask for features, if it makes sense as a whole to their business, they'll usually implement it, which is going to be hard to get from the other components out there.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just make a couple other comments on stuff we see. I mean, we're in kind of a privileged position to kind of see the whole variety of the different ways people will price and package things. So kind of very similar to the way Brad was describing, a lot of MSPs will they'll have a whole range of different a la carte services. They'll go in and they'll consult and figure out what the client needs. when they initially onboard them, and they'll build a kind of a comprehensive bundle, and they'll, and many times it'll come out looking like a bundle to the client, but underneath the covers, there's a whole quoting process to kind of build up what is this client actually going to get. An anchor gets put in there, when needed, and it can be really priced and packaged in different ways depending on how much storage. Are you primarily using the backup function, or is you also using file sync component? Is it really a collaboration need or a backup need? So that's what we often see, and then we have a whole other host of MSPs that just say, look, business grade file sync is a critical component of our managed service offering. It just goes in. It's a standard piece and just gets deployed. And then the other tricky thing that you have to think about is what we see a lot of partners say, making that last decision. Well, it's just going to be a standard piece. It's just at renewal time, you have a client who's coming up on a 1, 2, or 3 year contract, and when they come up for renewal, they say, look, hey, you've been complaining about those VPN problems. You guys have this Dropbox, consumer grade Dropbox problem. We know more of your workforce is using iPads and wants to have access to their content. We're going to add file sync XYZ to your package, and your bill is going to go up by X or Y, by month. And so those are some of the different ways we also see it bundled or priced and packaged. So let's see. Let me just going back to our Q&A log. Just want to remind everyone we do have a couple more minutes here. I guess, Fred asked about just the backup capability in Anchor. We talked quite a bit about it early on. Is anybody deploying, does anyone just focus on the backup capability alone while not really educating the client on the file sync capability? Or is it always kind of a package deal that backup and file sync go together?
So from the Dayhill side, we remind them and let them know that they don't have to dump it to a server if they don't have a server, or to a NAS or any other device. We do make sure that usually out of the gate we try to do backups, because if we can't recover the file, it's our neck on the line usually. So it's kind of out of the gate included with the file sync components, and we've been able to over time include a pretty hefty amount of gigs per user that we sign based on our pricing, and usually they've been well under that quota, so it allows us to do backups as well as have their size for file sync shares and components for that.
Yeah, and let me just kind of clarify, just for the audience, if you're not yet deploying the product a lot, the backup capability is an included feature. Like the file level backup capability in Anchor is included, and so all for one wholesale monthly price. You as the MSP, if you're doing the SaaS version of the product, you get the software and the cloud access, the backup capability and the file sync capability all for one price. So it's not split out. There's not like feature packs where one's included or not. It's just what we often find is we either find partners that are more focused on the file sync and collaboration side of things, or on the backup side of things, using it as a backup tool, or both. So anyway, just wanted to clarify that. So just Angel wants to can you guys talk a little bit about what your typical client looks like? So anyone jump in there, like, in terms of size, how many machines, verticals, that sort of thing.
This is Brad with Walser. We really don't have a typical customer. We work in a lot of different verticals, everything from manufacturing to nonprofits to medical, dental. We tend to focus on maybe 50 users or less, but I'll tell you, we have offices as small as 2 and 3 users, and we have even some private schools that have upwards of about 60, 70 users. And I got to say, it's been a big hit with the teachers that take on lesson plans and other things to work on that use that as a replacement, or as we enable their file server to be available to them without the use of VPN. So we don't really have a typical customer we look for. We work through a lot of different verticals, have everywhere from 2 users up to about 80 users in our organization.
This is Antonio Stroman. Hey, yeah, typically I'm kind of just kind of piggyback on that. We don't really have a specific size. The good thing about the product is that, you know, as feature rich as it is, you might have, you know, some people, like for instance, you might have a single biller who, you know, they do outside billing for a particular medical provider, and they also have to be HIPAA compliant. So what will happen is that you might have one single medical biller who actually needs the features, and so we go anywhere from one user up to one of our clients has about 180. So, you know, it's very scalable, and it really depends on, you know, your environment and how you're trying to sell to your particular clients.
Okay. Let's see here. So let's just kind of tackle a few last questions here. So somebody wanted to know, you know, how would you get more pricing or information? You know, if you're not already in discussion with a eFolder salesperson, you can just go to eFolder.net and submit a form online there, and a salesperson will call you back ASAP, be able to give you put you in touch with a product specialist who will be able to give you a live tour of the product and a demo. We have an NFR program that's available to MSPs for you, so you can actually use the product internally at your own company, and you know, give it a whirl and get your hands dirty a little bit before you actually make a purchase decision or start deploying it to your clients. Yeah, that's how you would get going. Fred wants to know, is there two-factor authentication? Yes, that feature is supported. I guess like what I want to end with is just kind of more of a high-level question. You know, for the panel, just if a partner is not using Anchor yet today, what advice would you give them to just getting started? If you think back to your when you got started, are there any lessons learned in terms of getting your own team ramped up, or in terms of getting, handling your first couple client deployments? What lessons are there to share?
This is Michael Free with Dayhill. I would say the greatest thing is fill out that form, start with the NFR. Internally, if you understand it and know it, it's much easier support. There's not really much to it, which is great from a support perspective. But really, as you start to utilize it and see it in use, the feature functionality, it's really, really rich. So it's really easy to use as some clients have just used it as backups and don't do any cloud storage. So really, it fits whatever component you need for that client. And even on that, so somebody asked about two-factor authentication. It does synchronize with Active Directory, because we all hate having a million passwords. So you can sync it to Active Directory accounts and allow for a seamless login for the end users using it.
This is Antonio Stroman. I would agree with all the points that were made so far. In addition, is until you guys actually get in there and start using the product, you don't know what you're missing. And then once you found out, hey, these are some great items, and how simple they are to deploy to your individual clients. And then once you see that, hey, we have a great solution, now you actually get ginned up to actually go out there and introduce it to other partners, or other clients, I should say.
Brad, any final parting wisdom?
No, I think everything discussed has been very good. I'll say, I guess it's good to get your price structure. Again, with the way, at least with our on-premise solution, obviously there's a lot of different pricing methods of price per user, price per gig, a lot of different things. I would say make sure you have a solid price structure, make sure you understand the feature set. I would say definitely go out in the partner area and grab some of their good content that they have that helps with the sales side. And, put a couple of slides together in a slide deck, and it just really makes those sales calls or consults with customers go very smoothly. So.
Okay, well, that was all great advice for everybody. Access the NFR, get your feet wet, get your hands dirty, use it in your own business, have your staff really understand the ins and outs of how the product works, and it can really improve productivity and collaboration. and make sure you're backed up and defend against malware, etc. Focus on your pricing and packaging, come up with your strategy, and then leverage the sales and marketing tools that eFolder's made available in the playbooks. So that's kind of the recipe, and we're here to help. And I just want to finish by thanking our panelists today. Tons of great insights, tons of great tips on how to get going, how to deploy and leverage this product and build a business around it. So Michael Ferre, Antonio Stroman, and Brad Walser, guys, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you,
Yes,
Ted.
sir. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, so this was another eFolder Partner Chat. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. Look forward to seeing you on the next eFolder webinar. We'll be sending around copies of the content, and your colleagues, if you want to share this out, can always access copies of our webinars on the eFolder YouTube channel. Thanks a lot, everybody, and take care.